Hi everyone. I apologize because I'm clearly not very good in tech, so this is going to be funny. Let's hope I don't press the wrong button. So yeah, I think the first comment I wanted to say is about the title of the talk. London or Berlin, it could also apply to Silicon Valley. Like, the point is, we're talking about startups, we're talking about this entrepreneurship ecosystem. The point of this talk is to show that we don't need to aspire to one model. That's the basic point. And far from being an expert, I think the main contribution that I can bring to you guys here is basically to share my story a little bit. So I come from a small town called Coimbra, which has not a lot of people. And I would really classify it as a place where you wouldn't expect a lot of activity to happen. Funnily enough, after living in a few countries, now I'm working in Salamanca, which is something like 300 kilometers from Coimbra. So consider this circle. And I was finding that both two places were very unlikely places to have an entrepreneurship ecosystem to promote startups that actually made a difference. They are not Silicon Valley material, and those are the examples that I chose to bring forward to you. So, completing my introduction, I'm leaving this slide on because of that red circle over there. I mean, what do I do? Why am I here? And I'm part of a project that basically wants to connect ecosystems. And to connect ecosystems, you have to develop them. So starting from Salamanca, our great, brilliant idea was to make a big event. I don't know if that sounds familiar to some of you guys here. That's also why me being here is very interesting, because I was just over there 2 months ago. And I was Startup Ole. And yeah, so I think that's a good point to start for Salamanca. And when I talk about connecting ecosystems and projects, it will get complicated very quickly. And I'm standing over here because the biggest thing I have to show for you guys is this blue big star in my chest. The Startup Europe. It's one of it's the biggest and bestest initiative from the European Commission to develop startups. And I'm in what I personally consider the biggest, I said I would do it wrong. There we go. I consider I'm in the biggest and bestest project, which, despite all its flaws, I think it's quite interesting. So basically the point is, even though it looks like, we're not a travel agency, but the point really is, you see the places on the map, Salamanca, Madrid, I mean, let's consider that one ecosystem, Milan, Berlin, and Dublin. So essentially, the point is, okay, so these ecosystems have their own development in some way, and what we go for, that was not my fault, I think. Well, what we try to do basically is we pick interesting startups from these ecosystems, we identify activities that they could do in other ecosystems, which mostly is events, and we are not a travel agency, because even though we bring them there, the point is we introduce them to the local players. We facilitate that little step. It's basically a series of soft landing activities, if you want to put it that way, but all with the objective, as you can imagine, grand ambitions from the Commission, making European a little bit more connected. And you know, even if the project achieves 10% of what it was set out to do, we can at least, most of us, agree that it's worth it. No, I can't see. There are too many screens. Yeah, what did I want to say? Oh yeah, this shameless self-promotion. If you want to know more about this initiative, if you think that this is more or less cool, we're going to go out of these ecosystems and be in slush in 1 or 2 weeks. We're going to bring 20 startups. I think it's going to be our biggest group yet. It's going to be very cool and cold. Slush is in Helsinki, by the way. Yeah. So what did I want to say next? Oh yeah, I just wanted to show that we bring happiness. So that's when we went to South Summit. Some people here might recognize some people in the photo. Anyway, those are startups happy with us, so mission accomplished. Okay, so basically, I really want to keep these simple, so don't blame me for simplifying everything and using the most simple slides as well. Why does everyone want to be in Silicon Valley, London, and Berlin? You've got the money, it's the first thing. I mean, why would you go anywhere else? That's where the investors are. I mean, if I am in my hometown, who am I going to talk to? Am I going to talk to my uncle who knows this guy from the bank who might be able to get... Well, maybe you have the uncle, the other guys don't. So go to Silicon Valley, there's the money. There's the market. I mean, if you're going to do an app that's basically selling on-demand hamburger toppings, something ridiculous, there's an app for everything. You got to do that with the right crowd. Where's that crowd? Community. It's not said enough, basically, that to make a startup successful, you need the support of a community. That means that, as it was said in several talks already today, if you're developing an app and you have a technical issue, if you have someone near you who you can call, meet, and say, I've got this problem, do you know who can help me? Just hopefully what my job in the previous slide does, the facilitating the connections. I mean, when everything is closer, it's much easier, and that's the point. And then you've got, of course, and I'm a victim of that one, especially for Berlin, the coolness factor. I mean, oh yeah, I'm gonna set up my startup in Salamanca. Yeah, that's a hard one. Okay, yeah, wait, I wanted to advocate for the other thing, right? So hopefully this would work. Yeah, why be anywhere else? This got much smaller. No, can we? Okay, so basically what happens is, funnily enough, creating a startup in San Francisco is basically much more expensive now than probably not as it was compared to, I don't know, 100 years ago, but then what could you do? But it's basically ridiculous. So the point is, if you go a little bit away, I mean, you've got San Francisco, you've got London, ridiculously expensive. You go one step away, and the economy is working in your favor, in principle. And one thing that's actually the main point of all of this is that while we are seeing a lot of initiatives, including mine, including what we've talked about before, to basically mobilize talent and capital to make us all one world, one community, that's not true right now, and it's very unlikely that it will be true very soon. What am I talking about? We have great people, great brains around the world that are not enabled. They don't have an opportunity to create their thing. And they actually don't know if they want to be enabled, or they don't want to leave. It's fine. Not everyone wants to go to San Francisco. I mean, sometimes the more you hear about it. I guess it's a great place. I actually haven't been. Anyway, about the problems. I'm getting very much into the hippie talk as well. Startups are supposed to solve problems, yeah. And I mean, sure, having a company that's headquartered in Silicon Valley, that's headquartered in London, that's headquartered in Singapore, that sets up a digital platform for this and that, yeah, that might work to solve a global problem. Maybe that is a global problem. But a lot of the problems are local, and you'll never get it if you're not there with your consumers, if you don't understand the reality. And startups, the beautiful part of startups to me, is that they exist to overthrow the status quo and say, we have a better way of doing this. But to know the status quo, you have to be there. And you have to be passionate about it, I suppose. And yeah, and eventually, I mean, how many events do you get where you're just saying, oh yeah, I've got this great idea for an app, those hamburger toppings I was talking about before, oof, the next big thing. So yeah, and I think the next thing I want to say is, let's talk about someplace unlikely. So, my hometown. I actually had trouble getting a nice picture of, yeah. It's not too bad, visits. But basically, we don't have a lot of people. The most distinguishing factor that it has is that it's one of the oldest universities in Europe. Innovation, maybe, but also a lot of old ways of doing things. Economy and jobs, they're not exciting. That's, you know, it's a simple way of saying you don't think of Coimbra as a place, as I say in the next slide. You go there to study. A lot of people go there to study and party. You don't go there to stay. It's a place where you go and you leave. So, yeah, I know quite a few smart people there, and still the cynicism is the same. Why would anything work here? And I'm going to get a little bit specific, basically, because I know I'm going to talk about one specific initiative that I think really leveraged the potential of Coimbra, not in any way to its maximum, but to something. You know, and I think this is what we should value, that we're getting somewhere by being smart about it. So, actually, yeah. How to put it? So the university had some labs. These labs, these science things. You can see I'm an expert. And somehow, from the simple standard procedure of there are companies that need these services, problems were identified, opportunities were identified. The typical researcher didn't give second thought to these opportunities. The typical university professor didn't have the culture, the entrepreneurship culture, to think, maybe I want to do something else in my spare time. Maybe my students want to take this opportunity and build a company out of it. And even if they thought about it, they didn't have anywhere else to go. And we're talking really early, so you don't need much. And I really think that the transformative thing here was that in this organization that is doing a lot of good things, but still not exactly the most typical startup mindset, the let's do things, let's hustle, let's get together. They just, I think they just did the basic thing of adding entrepreneurship to science and seeing what we can get out of that. So my point is, they found that what they had was good, and they leveraged from it. Simple, simple thing. And yeah, the two examples I always remember are basically critical software. This was basically when this institute got its reputation, because basically some kids from Coimbra were making software and selling it to NASA. So it's like, oh, okay, wait, there's maybe something interesting here. And much more recently, what was it, 2-3 years ago? Fidzai came from there. Now, I think it actually has at least an office in Silicon Valley, but still a lot of development in Coimbra, a lot of the marketing in Lisbon. But my point here, in a small country, 10 million, smallish, in a town of 100,000 people, this country has perhaps the potential for, I think some experts summed it up better than me before, but let's say 5 unicorns. This is one of them, you know? You know, I get a little bit into detail here. I'll go a little bit faster. Basically, I think what's interesting here is as well that this is not a typical startup thing, but it's the strength that was there. It was the potential. It was the opportunity. These companies, they're not selling apps. They're different. They're slow. They're not that exciting. I mean, some of the people I was actually working for a little bit, they just wanted to show why their pharmaceutical compound or whatever is going to lead into something big. The first thing I found out was that academics have really a lot of trouble to sell. I'm not the best one, but that was hard. And two, we're talking about completely different industries, slow industries. And that's what they have. So the attitude is different. And I think what really shows is that to leverage this strength, the people with the mindset of we can do something big here, they have to be patient. And they're still being patient. There's still a lot of work to do. Yeah, I think there's the rest. You can either read or talk with me afterwards. There's nothing too particular. Yeah, perhaps the most interesting thing is, yeah, the positioning, of course, because that's the crucial thing. I'm going to repeat this because that's the point of this talk, that if smaller ecosystems that have potential are to be leveraged and turned into something bigger, if I would give any advice in my humble position, it would be two things. Your strengths, if I can pronounce that properly, and positioning. And what I mean by positioning is something very simple. It ties back exactly to the title of the talk. These guys in Coimbra, they're not trying to be the capital of startups. That would be ridiculous. If they are aiming at anything, is being good at what they do and having the vision that they are part of something bigger and playing their role there. I'm not saying they're doing their job perfectly, but I would say that really having this mindset, okay, we're building something and we have to build it in a certain way because our positioning is such that it requires a different way of working, then things start to happen. And you don't constantly disappoint yourself that you're not Silicon Valley. Let's talk about something else that's unlikely. Salamanca. It's a little bit bigger, but you can see that the slide is pretty much the same as before, because that's the irony of it. What is it? Yeah, 27 years later. No, yeah, 5 or 6 countries later, 300 kilometers from my hometown, I'm in a town that's exactly the same, but they speak this weird language. So yeah, so you know the story. The personal thing that I found in Salamanca that was even worse than Coimbra is I will be horrible to Spanish, but being factual here, one of their difficulties, of course, creating startups is that they are in the Spanish-speaking world. They are not in the English-speaking world. There's attempts to be there, but it's always difficult. And this always creates a little bit of a disconnect, even though it always also provides opportunity, but there's that. Second thing is, even though Madrid and Barcelona are clearly on the map, Salamanca people, students, professors, otherwise, the concept of an entrepreneur, that's still very new. This might seem amazing to a lot of us, but the attitude is to get into a room, sit, listen, go home, do your homework. It's not sit, listen, ask questions, think, oh, what could I be doing? What could I be doing the minute I walk through that door? What could I be doing the minute this guy stops talking and I can actually do something with this? So yeah, so let's say it's not a great start. So I think really the point here in Salamanca is, of course, it plays to its strengths, but I think the positioning is a little bit the key thing here. Even though Coimbra was closer to Lisbon and Porto, it's not the same thing as this situation. Basically, every time people think of Salamanca, they think, I can do business here, perhaps, because I'm close to Madrid. But it's so much cheaper. And this year, actually, even the transport is getting better. But that's one thing that constantly on people's minds. And so, basically, the idea, and this time I'm not mentioning the organization because it's sort of mine. The organization that I think is transforming things a little bit, basically is focusing on events. A little bit like you guys, perhaps, but that's another conversation. And of course, we had one ace in the sleeve, which was the thing I'm wearing on my chest. We had the opportunity to basically attract international speakers, to make Salamanca feel a little less disconnected. Part of the initiative I'm wearing on my chest, that's something like 10 projects. You bring those 10 projects to Salamanca, you've got at least 20 or 30 people who run accelerators, other universities that actually do something about entrepreneurship, together in one place. And that for Salamanca, that matters. And what we found out also that was completely essential for us to have any success was that to stimulate the community inside Salamanca before the events and throughout the year between the events was that we had to have a community. Because there was really none. It needed to be sparked. What could we do? We are not experts. We just know that this is sort of the right way to go, but we don't have the content. And of course, we got lucky. We realized that even in places like Salamanca, there's a sort of diaspora. There's people who have done it, and they want to help again. Sometimes it feels too easy. When it's done, it feels easy that, that you're running a program where basically the only thing you're doing is saying, this expert on product design is going to speak next week, the other expert on strategy is going to speak the week after, so on and so on and so on, and you have a startup course that's been done like this. All you've done is tell people what they should be doing, and they are the experts. And this is thanks to a community, again. And that's probably not the nicest way of putting it, but since Salamanca is one of the oldest universities as well, there's a lot of young people, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of energy that can be used. And yeah, that's essentially how we got 100 startups in Salamanca. What do I have for you? I have 2 examples. One, that I think it's, the first one is an example of how basically just by creating an event in Salamanca, which has different characteristics than any event in Madrid. If you go to events in Madrid right now, they're great, but they have like the problem of Web Summit. Too many people. It's not intimate. These events are intimate. This is valuable. I've spoken to, I don't know, like half the people here. We actually have the opportunity to listen, not just talk. And if I haven't turned this off. And I think the example is that the very first event that was organized in Salamanca, just to show off a little bit of the talent in the region, this company just, Wayuk, had a chance to talk to some guys from Telefonica. They got sent to Madrid, and that's all right, because there are more opportunities there. And Wayuk, this on-demand cleaning services, you have a party at your house. You go to your phone, you get, yeah, please solve this mess before my mom gets here. It's competing with Helpling, who's backed by Rocket Internet. And if you know who Rocket Internet is, you know that's a big thing. Beyond Price, I like mentioning Beyond Price because they do quite a smart solution. Let's say they basically help hotels figure out what is the right price at the right moment. And they're proudly from Salamanca. They've stayed in Salamanca, and they're some of the people that help us out the most during our startup courses and whatever. And these guys, we could, through our project, help them a little bit further. We sent them to Silicon Valley. To know people, and they're still based in Salamanca. But they're now present, I think, in more than 50 countries. Latin America mostly, but the US is also there. Again, it's not so bad for a town made of irresponsible students, huh? How does it work? I really like writing this push, 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 because not only is that the motto in our office, but that's really how it was. As I was saying, basically, we just had to get other people to do stuff. That was our role. Just the thing, realizing, okay, who do we have here and how can we use them? And this might actually work if we see it all together. It's coordination. And yeah, the culture. Just being able to put into some people's mind, to some students' mind, to some professors' minds, that this entrepreneurship thing not only is here to stay, but it has real opportunities, has real impact for them potentially, makes a difference. And that's it. I mean, the funding here I mentioned because, yeah, it's what you see when you start getting some visibility. Basically, the local players start approaching you and saying, okay, I think your work is interesting. I want to see more. And I will support you with money, because money is needed. And like I said, I think already quite a few times, positioning, positioning, positioning. I think the real point of these global initiatives, of this shirt I'm wearing, like I said quite a few times, is to help also these places feel part of something bigger. And this matters, especially if we're talking about young people. And realizing that, okay, we have opportunities like, again, the one I'm wearing, we have opportunities that are national. And again, you're close to Madrid, you're not trying to be Madrid, you're not competing, you're complementing. I'm insisting this because I'm, of course, remembering a lot of conversations on how much hard work you have to put into these things, just for concepts. And I think now it was my self-reflexive moment to think about the 6 months ago, as I was putting together the agendas, I was putting together the speakers, as I was figuring out, okay, how the hell are we going to bring and organize more than 500 people to Salamanca? A lot of these speakers are going to be international. How do we convince them to come? You know, I was inviting quite a few of them myself, you know, putting your name on the line. Just thinking, okay, what is the real reason that we can have, that we can provide for these people to come to our little end of the world? Again, I think it comes with luck, hard work, and pushing. We had some good guys in-house. We had the companies I mentioned. Those are okay. They provide the inspiration to also other startups to come. And like I said, the first event that was organized provided an opportunity for a startup to go somewhere else. So Telefonica, for example, was one of the players that signs up saying, you did a good job before, so I'm up for it. Someone else sees Telefonica. They think, oh, I'm missing out. I need to go there as well. What do you say when you're talking with these people? Telefonica is there, and a few other corporate players. If you don't want to come, that's fine. And I could speak 4 hours here. That's not 4, that's a lot more than 4 hours. Let's just say it was good. If you want numbers, I think speakers we had, it varies on the definition, but we had something like 100. Startups, we had 100 as well. We managed in 2 days to have those 100 speakers in 2-3 tracks. This was hard. This required creativity. Yeah, that's probably something we have to talk afterwards. Anyway, I think that's it for self-reflection. Just know that there's a lot to talk about here. I want to offer now something completely different, just so you don't think I'm always talking about small towns. I'm talking about emerging markets. Why am I talking about emerging markets? Because in the end, what I'm saying with this Coimbra and Salamanca, I'm saying that there's something worth it to take out from there. And I want to give a completely different example. That in emerging markets, let's keep it simple, Africa, which is a continent, not a country, it is known that basically there's a lot of opportunities there. There's a lot of talent. And finally, investors and accelerators are realizing that there's a lot of good deals there that are not done locally for a lot of valid good reasons that can be done. So basically, there's a huge opportunity here to look at what a lot of smart people are doing in Africa, enabling them. If you're an international investor, you get a good deal. If you're a startup accelerator, you get a good company, and if you're a startup in those countries, you're solving a real problem. So I think this is something very interesting that we should look more into. Yeah. This is the point. It can be worth it, developing the small ecosystems. As I'm not saying that any of my examples are perfect. Coimbra and Salamanca still have to get a lot cooler, but it's improving, you know? And that's, I think that's what matters. And I'm at 0. I should have looked at that before. So, yeah. Thanks for listening. I'm going to skip the discussion topics because I think we're going to get into them. But I'm going to say thank you with words and with text.